Welcome back to SpectreVision. This week, Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Hello and welcome to SpectreVision.
Tonight's episode, we talk about
Silent Night, Deadly Night,
We'll exercise judgment right now.
1984.
One of the best years for film.
yes, arguably not the best film from that year, though.
Oh, clearly not. You have Terminator, Ghostbusters. I mean, come on.
The list is long and distinguished.
Yes. We had never seen this movie before. This was a new one. This has been on my list for a long time of movies I've wanted to see. So, recently, like last month, I purchased the 2-pack of these two so we could check them out for these. They have the versions that are tied together with, there's even a little clip at the beginning of the movie where it talks about how there's 2 different versions of the movie put together, so it's the most complete version basically you can get. So there's 2 degrees of
Film quality, it bounces back
Yeah.
and forth. It's very noticeable in there, right? They probably could have spent a little bit more money on color grading and all that, but for a fucking cheap 84 flick, no one gives a fuck.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
great.
It's old. It's good. When it first started, I definitely remember thinking this has the vibes of clearly Black Christmas, just because it's an older movie and we just watched it, but also Halloween, not just because it deals with a holiday slasher, but it's also a mentally ill holiday slasher who has childhood trauma.
And this one's kind of a slow burner for what you get out of it. It's interesting setup. They don't fuck around, though, at the beginning. They go right into, like, you see this crazy grandpa, and at first you're like, oh, is this crazy grandpa going to be the murderer? Because, like, he's there, grandkid.
Starts, 1970, I believe, right?
1971, and they go to visit on Christmas Eve the father's dad. So they're going to see grandpa at the whatever home he lives in, right? They don't.
The Utah Mental Facility is
Is
what
that what
it
it
is.
said? Okay, so they go to the Utah mental facility to visit grandpa, and grandpa is acting like he's deaf and ignoring everybody, and then everybody besides the oldest grandkid like leave the room to go talk about dad's progress or whatever, and
It was named Billy for future reference.
yeah. And so Billy is there talking to grandpa, and grandpa basically starts fucking with Billy, basically telling him like, oh, you got to be good for Christmas because otherwise Santa will punish you. And so he like gets this idea like planted in his head.
Yeah.
And his grandpa looks like Santa because he's got the white beard, gray and white beard, like looks old and
Definitely looks like a haggard, fucked up Santa.
yeah, kind of like the bad Santa type of Santa vibes, right? I
Yeah,
almost
like if
feel.
Santa had 30 years previously done a lot of coke and hookers.
And was really skinny. But yeah, I mean that's not impossible. Not all Santas have to
Hence
be
the
fat.
coke.
I mean, but Americans like to think that Santa Claus is American, so typically he's going to be a fat piece of dog shit. So that fits right in here.
Yeah, so right off the bat you see after that they kind of flash to Santa robbing that convenience store.
Yep. You see a Santa Claus go in there, fucking mows down the clerk at the convenience store, shoots him once, and then fucking shoots him twice for good measure. I mean, obviously the origination of the double tap here is what I saw.
Yeah.
And then he gets fucking triggered when he goes to steal the money out of the cash till, and there's shit money in there, and he's fucking angry about that. So then he goes and gets in his car, and he's still pissed off. And then you see him down the road having car trouble. Guess whose family decides to appear? Billy and his family. Ooh, bad move, Billy. You shouldn't stop to help strangers on the side of the road. Another lesson in that storybook.
Basically. Especially if they're dressed as Santa Claus. Fuck them.
If they're dressed as anybody besides me or Alec, don't fucking stop to help.
Exactly.
Now, if you see us on the side of the road, obviously you want to help us. We're great, kind people. We're very knowledgeable about film. We can help with all sorts of things in life.
Mm-hmm.
But not this Santa Claus because he starts fucking shooting at the family.
Yeah, he immediately he sticks a gun at the fucking dad or whatever, and then the dad drives off or whatever, but then he gets shot as he's trying to escape from the guy.
Which I give him credit for, because most of the times someone's in a car in a movie and they're shooting at him, miraculously they don't get fucking hurt. But in this case, he gets killed. So the mom and the 2 kids are alive, so you hear the baby screaming. You see Billy in the back seat. Well, Billy, being the survivalist he is, fucking flings himself out of that car and runs across the road before Santa realizes where he went. And then he gets to watch his mom get her fucking throat slit and her tits popped out. So guess what Billy sees?
Sex and violence.
Sex and violence.
Associated together forever.
Yep.
Yeah, that was really fucked up. Because that's the first... There's first of many sets of tits in this movie. And they are not earned in this scene. You don't feel good looking at these women's boobs because it's a fucking, like, basically a rape scene. He doesn't rape her, but it is a rape scene by that. You know what I mean? So
she's murdered, her boobs are out. It's not like in the funny kind of comedy way of like slasher flicks being like, oh, here's a pair of boobies before some violence. You're like, you watch this and you're like, yeah, that's kind of uncalled for there. And, you know, that's
the kind that's, it's unsettling when you watch it.
Yeah.
It works. It worked well.
So that's how they start to tell you the story of how Billy's life gets fucked up. Well, then clearly he goes up into what? A Catholic orphanage? Because that's what happens when your parents die? Or you don't have parents? So him and his little baby brother are there, right? And so, of course, now, a couple years later, Billy's a problem child at the orphanage because he's a bad kid. And so...
One of the, you know...
Instead of doing anything fucking good for anybody, which, if you believe the Catholic Church ever has, I'm sorry, you're wrong. Be triggered for that because you deserve it.
Fuck Mother Teresa.
And so...
Not even saying that ironically. I really mean it. Fuck Mother Teresa.
Yeah. So...
In her ass.
He winds up in this Catholic...
Fuckhole.
Orphanage. Yeah, and so then guess what? They all treat him like shit. No one wants to address the fact that he watched his mom and dad get fucking murdered on Christmas Eve by someone dressed as Santa. So then
one woman does. She wants to help him, and she's addressing it, and she's arguing with the head nun there, or whatever.
Yeah.
And she gives her shit, and she's like, I don't give a fuck what you think. And the other one's like, but we should give him some time to deal with this. We need to figure this out, help him out. And she's like, he should just fucking get over it, though.
Yeah, so typical Catholic Church bullshit, like, if you don't indoctrinate with what you want, we can't help you.
I call you done!
Like, if you don't drop to do what we tell you to do, there's no help for you, you don't deserve it. So, like, there's this one lady that kind of wants to help, but if she was really good, she would have been persistent and gone above and beyond this bitch. Superior Lady, that's what her name is. Superior Lady should have been killed out of there. And my number one problem with this movie, I'm going to tell it to you right now, but we'll circle back to it.
You calm down!
Is this Superior bitch doesn't die at the end. You know who should have fucking died in this movie? That bitch. Because she could have fucking stopped this from happening, but she chose to be a terrible fucking Catholic human.
Basically. There's some good, interesting death scenes in this, and it kind of... Once Billy's an adult, he gets a job at a toy store, basically, through the Catholic thing. I think he's supposed to be 18 at this point.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
He's like this... He's kind of average-looking, his face, but you can tell he's like a muscular, more ripped dude.
So they need someone to work in the stockroom. So the store owner at first was like, nah, I don't want to fucking deal with anyone from the orphanage. You know, he's kind of a doesn't give a fuck kind of a guy either. But you find out more later on, like, he's actually kind of... He's kind of one of those people that you're like, you've met that guy in real life when you see his character, right? He's a true-to-life person in a slasher flick, which is kind of bizarre. You don't see that a lot.
Yeah.
So.
His fucking coworker's a fucking skeet towel, and then he arguably imagines her being raped by his coworker, the other girl that works there. I think there's two coworkers. One's a woman, one's a guy. He wants the chick. He's clearly has sexual tension with her, but he also has issues of sex and violence from that shit never being addressed from his childhood. And also, he witnessed, when he was a kid at the orphanage, he skipped past this, but he found a couple fucking. I think it was a nun and another person or whatever. I don't know what it was. But two people fucking. He saw that. And then he saw the nun go in there and punish them for it. So... And now every time he sees sex, that's his association with it, is the violence of seeing his mother get killed and now being punished for doing that.
And on top of that, he got punished because she whooped his ass with the belt too, because he watched them having sex. So basically, you know, like he's been brainwashed into believing that anything of a sexual nature is terrible and bad. So like, you really get this story of this person being fucking utterly destroyed as a human being and being demonized and inhumanized by all the bullshit in his life because no one really wants to give a fuck.
You also get the feeling when Billy's hired that the shop owner, when he looks at him, they're clearly, what they're trying to say with this scene is, oh hey, the shop owner notices Billy is actually not a child and that he can lift some things. Okay, but what it actually looks like is the shop owner looks at Billy and then you hear music from the room kick in and he's like, I want to fuck this kid. I want to fuck this guy.
Yeah, it definitely has those fuck me eyes.
It has that feel to it. Whether it's intentional, whether it's just me seeing things in that movie, I don't know. It has a questionable soundtrack too. Remember that song that just kicked in and they were like, montage at the toy store?
Yeah, and so like you see Billy like struggling the closer they get to Christmas, right, in the shop. Like the one guy in the stockroom that's kind of an asshole is like, man, what's your fucking problem? Like you've been really mouthy all of a sudden. And he's like basically tells him like, fuck off, leave me alone. But you know, they're approaching the Christmas season, so then you see them put up a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year sign in the toy store. And guess what? Billy gets triggered. Like you see him go from happy to fucking disturbed real quick when he
all
sees
during
that
the
Santa
same
Claus face.
montage.
Yes.
Where the music's still playing that does not fit the scene for that.
No.
They
It's
should
like
have
they had
definitely...
cheap rights for that music at the time or something, or was somebody
See, that's where
favor?
It's Always Sunny almost remade parts of this better. When Charlie sees Santa Claus there at the mall, and the music goes into reverb and shit, and he goes nuts. He put some of that in this movie, would have been good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so that's pretty wild how that cuts down, and then...
Jabba the Hutt toys. Jabba the Hutt toys are in this movie. There, he works in a toy store. You know, you have to try to pick out the toys in the background when you're watching. When you're naturally someone like us who collects toys.
There's a good selection of toys in that toy shop.
I saw a Castle Grayskull and Jabba the Hutt were the main two things that I could.
And the Dewbacks were in there next
the
to Jabba the
Dewbacks.
Hutt. So, and there's a bunch of Halloween costumes as well. So that's just kind of fun stuff in the background. So the other big thing with Billy here is like, right, they basically force him into being Santa Claus. So then at that point in time, like, you see him kind of psychologically break and become Santa Claus. Like, you see him, like, really fucking with the kid. Like, basically, they're like, oh, he's so great with the kids. And then you see what he's saying to the kids. And he's basically saying, if you're not good...
He's saying the same shit his grandpa said to him.
Yeah, you're going to be good to get your gifts from Santa. Otherwise, you're going to be punished severely. And, you know, so obviously everyone, like, changes their demeanor if they're acting out with Santa Claus, which works out pretty well because it just kind of shows you, like, the progression of, like, okay, we're waiting for him to snap. And it doesn't go into the big killing spree like you expect it to as soon as you would expect in a horror movie.
Say, this is what around the time where we relate to Billy the most when he starts to murder all his coworkers. Thank God I have no coworkers these days. But, yeah, that's a whole scene. He murders everyone who works at the store for various different reasons. He strangles the one guy with the fucking Christmas lights and he hangs him up.
Yeah, because that's what he thinks the girl's being raped. So you don't know if that's what he's envisioning or if that's really kind of what's going on.
Yeah, it's a little iffy here in parts of there, the editing of that, but...
And then obviously the girl that's being raped or whatever at the time, like you see her like freak out on Billy and tell him like to get the fuck away because he's a freak and a crazy person.
Yeah.
So then obviously he's got to take care of her too. So he kills her next.
Yeah, he in some of the deleted footage it shows some of the actual slicing and shit, and it shows her with a box cutter. He takes it and fucking just sticks it right here and slices up her. It doesn't like open up and show you anything awesome, like really gory, but it does show a bunch of blood coming out and she's screaming. So it's effective.
It works, and then like those shots are dark. A lot of the really violent stuff was added back in to try to make the complete picture of what it was. Like nowadays, it's stuff that you see all the time, kind of, but like for at the time, it was really risque and really fucked up. So you can see why they cut it. What I thought was pretty interesting though after that is like, you know, eventually you got to get him out of this place. So after he kills
Mr. Sims with a hammer.
Yep, you see the fucking
toy store.
the hammer claw just stuck in his head in the back, and so the other clerk that's I don't know, Mr. Sims' wife or friend or whoever else it is, they don't really establish too much of that, but she goes looking for him and then obviously he kills her off too. So then he escapes this place and is kind of on the hunt. And you know, it gets interesting here like with this last bit. Because then they set up this whole other house that he's got to go break into. Like, there's this typical teenage babysitter bullshit, like, which feels like every other horror flick ever.
Like God commanded.
Up until then, it's kind of its unique own thing.
Yeah, well, then it turns into just, all right, let's kill some people.
Yeah. And you kind of get that point across, right?
Yeah, you get some more boobies. And this time they're consensual boobies, so they're fun boobies. So... this woman's trying to get railed on a pool table while she's babysitting. Billy comes in there. Well, he doesn't just come in there. I guess she goes outside because she hears jingling, which is clearly his jingle bells. She mistakes for the cat. She goes up there to let it in while the other guy's like waiting down at the pool table at the bottom of the stairs behind a door.
Like 20 feet away.
So somehow, in this time, he turns on music and then goes deaf, I guess? I don't know. That's the only way I could see this scene happening the way it actually happened. But then Billy comes in She looks outside completely topless. She puts on her shorts to go up the stairs.
Yeah, she
not
puts on a pair of jean shorts.
Which, I don't know. I'm not a girl, but hey, whatever floats your boat. Sure. Billy barges in, fucking throws an axe at her, tries to whoop her ass, tosses her around a little bit, and then pulls a Lost Boys and throws her up on some antlers.
And doesn't throw her up on there,
Yeah.
which is what doesn't work. Like, he slowly pushes her through, like, the horns, and, like, you see, like, the edited footage from the gorier stuff get taken out, like, kind of mixed back in there. You can see where the bright spots in the film are, and...
It looks better with it in there just because you're seeing that extra shit.
Yeah,
and
it's
it almost is a little effective in a weird, like...
just a slow death way, yeah.
Well, no, you've seen Planet Terror and Death Proof. Both of those movies, specifically Planet Terror, has a thing where the film, as the more violent the movie is, the more degraded the film is in the actual movie.
Yeah.
And they did that because a lot of theaters, like, especially like in sex scenes and violent scenes, people would splice those things out and take them for themselves and shit. So there's lots of weird random cuts in those movies on purpose. But like that's what it reminded me of, like where it just gets like really grainy for a second for the really bloody and violent shit. It's actually kind of cool. Weird.
Yeah, and so clearly there's word on the street, right? So that nun that still had faith in Billy being redeemable and like actually kind of wanted to help, kind of half-assed the stuff, but she is a little too late on it. So obviously, so then they get the cops involved. The cops go into somebody else's house, and you see a father dressed as Santa Claus talking to his daughter on Christmas Eve with the wife, and whoop, that's a big uh-oh thing, and that's like really the end of that piece.
Oh, yeah, he doesn't kill that girl, remember? He gives her the knife.
Oh, yeah,
he leaves there.
She comes out and sees Santa Claus, and he asks her a couple times, like, straight to her face, he's like, have you been good this year? Have you done anything naughty? And she says no, and then she says it again, believable, and you see him reach for that box cutter, and you see him pull that blade out.
And your mind either thinks he's going to give her this blade or kill her. We'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, and obviously you can't really kill that young of a child in a movie at that point in time. Like,
Well, you could have, but it just wouldn't have been a good, wise choice or anything. It's just one of those things.
They would have had you edit it out. They would have been like, no, that's too
Nobody
far.
wanted to see that kid get killed.
No, so he gives her the box knife. He gives her the box knife as a present, which, you know, she graciously accepts because I guess
She's
that's
kind of
what-
like, this is kind of weird, but fuck it.
Yeah, Santa Claus does exist in her book.
My favorite is the sledding. The kids
Oh,
that go
yes.
sledding. There's two kids out there, and they're like, we're going to go sledding. And to be fair, when I say kids, they're probably like 15, 16, 17-year-olds.
Yeah, they make it look like there's this pair of younger kids out there, probably supposed to be like 12 to 14, somewhere around there.
Yeah, they're slightly younger than the other ones. There's two kids, and then there's two bullies, and they come up and bully them and steal their sleds, basically.
Which
And
is
then-
fine, because then you get a scene...
Yeah, one of them
Billy
goes down
gives
on
them
his
revenge.
sled. He's sliding down the thing, and you see Billy come over there with his fucking axe out of nowhere, comes up and just baseball fucking whacks this guy's head off with the axe.
And then his friend sees his friend coming downhill on the stolen sled without
Headless
a head.
fucking corpse riding a sled,
Yeah.
which is awesome. And then his head comes rolling down afterwards. They kind of spill out and lay next to each other while the other guy screams. That was wonderful.
Yeah, it was weird, because in this movie you go from kind of like understanding, like, Billy's been through some shit, like, so you understand, like, why he's a fucking nutcase. That doesn't necessarily justify what he's doing, obviously, because crazy people
But
should be
really,
helped.
since you've seen all of that he went through as a kid, this is one of those horror movie things. I think if you see all that stuff, you feel worse for them.
Yeah, because now they just don't have any fucking control
Like,
at all.
even with,
Yeah.
say, Jason's very similar. He's tragic, you know. Most of these characters are tragic characters, but you don't see a lot of his stuff as a kid. And as the movies go on, they show random glimpses of it, but never as much as like this has. So you feel like, man, I feel bad for this guy the whole movie. Even when he's fucking people up.
Even when he's in his worst, it's kind of weird, because you're like, there's someone that clearly needs help, and then like it's just being failed over and over and over again by people.
Yeah.
And not fucking paying attention to anyone's triggers. Like, here's someone that shouldn't ever be around Santa Claus stuff that's asked to dress up as Santa, right?
Right.
And obviously they're telling a story, so that's what they're intentionally doing, but...
Yeah.
And then the ending is the big scene where, you know, they get back to the orphanage, and...
There's at one point where she says to a kid named Richard to do something across the room, the nun. And the way they framed him up and everything, I was like, oh man. this is his younger brother from the beginning of the movie, the baby.
Yep.
So his baby brother's still there.
And obviously he was a baby, so he doesn't remember any of the trauma. So he's.
I don't even know if he
waiting.
knows that they're brothers or if either of them know at that
Yeah.
point. It doesn't make it very clear. He almost kills the fucking old lady with the axe, which is where Justin loses his shit because he gets shot instead. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, just let him kill this one lady.
Yeah.
I guess you don't want to let him kill him in front of all the kids is kind of the fucked up thing, because then you literally have 30 Billies running around. But
Yeah, but that fucking superior lady from the Catholic Church really fucking deserved to get.
She deserved her
fucking
head to be
murdered.
split open for sure.
Yeah, she should have been the first death. So when we get to the second movie, I'm hoping Billy's younger brother fucking finishes the job.
Come on, Ricky.
You got to do it because that lady fucking made you a monster and treated you like shit on top of all the trauma you experienced as a child. So instead of trying to help you, she just took it upon herself to make you a monster.
Yep.
So call her Dr. Frankenstein at this point because she's fucked up. But that's Silent Night, Deadly Night. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend it. Get the version we saw so you can see all the full gore stuff because it's really not anything worse than what you've seen now. If you've seen a Saw movie, there's nothing in this movie that's...
No. This is
anywhere
literally
near as
the only
grotesque as
reason
that.
it's like, oh no, is because it was the 80s.
Yeah.
You know how many shit's been cut out of Friday the 13th movies and all these other movies where they're like, yeah, we had this, we couldn't do this, we couldn't do that, we couldn't do this. It's just a struggle that always happens. But luckily we were able to see that footage put back into this movie. Speaking of putting things back in, if you want to stay tuned, Nick's mom will be joining us in a moment to be turned into Chinese finger cuffs right here.
It is over.